How did a series of conflicts spanning over a century shape the Europe we know today? Imagine a Europe where the boundaries we recognize today are still being drawn, not with pens on maps, but through fierce battles and royal decrees. This was the stage for the Hundred Years' War, a relentless struggle between England and France from 1337 to 1453. This wasn't just a war. It was the furnace in which the modern identities of these nations were forged. The conflict began over disputed claims to the French throne, a spark that ignited a relentless firestorm of battles across the rolling fields of France. As kings and nobles vied for power, ordinary lives and entire communities were caught in the crossfire, shaping destinies and altering the continent's cultural landscape. This war was more than a series of battles. It was a transformational era that redefined borders, loyalties, and national identities. As we explore the echoing clashes and strategic maneuvers, we uncover the roots of nationalism and statecraft that still influence Europe. To understand its profound impact, we must delve into the pivotal battles and political chessboard of the medieval era. What ignites a war that lasts over 100 years? This question takes us back to the mid-14th century, when the seeds of the Hundred Years' War were sown. The primary spark was a fiery dispute over who held the rightful claim to the French throne. The story begins with Edward III of England, who believed himself to be the legitimate heir through his mother, Isabella of France, the sister of the last direct Capetian king. However, the French nobility preferred a closer male line and crowned Philip VI, a cousin of the last king. This decision was guided by the Salic law, which prohibited inheritance through the female line. The throne was not the only bone of contention. Territories like Aquitaine in France, held by English kings since the Norman conquests, became a battleground for power and control. These regions were economically significant and symbolized royal prestige and influence. These royal rivalries set the stage for a prolonged and transformative struggle. Imagine battlefields where the fate of nations was decided. The Hundred Years' War was punctuated by numerous clashes, but none were as pivotal as the battles of Crécy and Poitiers. These confrontations not only showcased the bravery and strategy of the combatants, but also introduced revolutionary tactics that altered the course of military history. In the summer of 1346, the Battle of Crecy became one of the first major engagements. The English, led by King Edward III, were vastly outnumbered by the French forces. However, what they lacked in numbers, they compensated with strategic brilliance and the devastating effectiveness of the English longbow. Positioned advantageously on the high ground, the English archers unleashed volleys of arrows that decimated the French cavalry, renowned for their might and armor. The longbow, with its ability to pierce through the French knight's armor, proved a game-changer. The battle ended in a resounding victory for the English, highlighting not just their martial skill, but also the impact of technological innovation in warfare. Fast forward 10 years to 1356, and the stage was set for another dramatic showdown at Poitiers. This time, it was the Black Prince Edward, the son of Edward III, who led the English forces. Much like at Crecy, the English were outnumbered and faced a larger French army. However, employing a similar strategy, they formed a defensive position and utilized the longbow to its full, fearsome potential. The French, led by King John II, charged repeatedly, but could not break through the English defenses. The result was a calamitous defeat for the French, and King John II was captured, a turn of events that sent shockwaves throughout Europe. These battles not only demonstrated military prowess, but also started reshaping medieval warfare. The success of the English longbowmen at Crécy and Poitiers not only underscored the importance of technology and tactical innovation, but also marked the beginning of a shift in how battles were fought, signaling the end of the era dominated by heavy cavalry. The reverberations of these battles were felt far beyond the immediate political consequences, influencing military tactics for generations to come. Heroes and legends often forge the identity of a war. In the swirling maelstrom of the Hundred Years' War, two figures stand out for their monumental impact: the Black Prince and Joan of Arc. These individuals not only shaped the course of the war, but also became emblematic of their respective nations. The Black Prince, Edward of Woodstock, was a paragon of chivalric values and military prowess. The eldest son of King Edward III of England, he earned his nickname from the black armor he wore into battle. The prince's leadership during the battles of Crécy and Poitiers showcased his tactical genius, and contributed significantly to the English victories. His ability to inspire his troops and command respect was unmatched. However, his victories were marred by his failing health, which eventually led to his untimely death. Despite his early demise, the Black Prince's legacy as a warrior prince endures in English history. On the French side, a young peasant girl named Joan of Arc emerged as a beacon of hope during a time of despair. Claiming divine guidance, Joan led the French army to several important victories. Her most significant contribution was lifting the siege of Orléans, which revitalized French spirits and paved the way for Charles VII's coronation. Joan's leadership, characterized by unshakable faith and extraordinary courage, turned her into a national heroine and a martyr after her capture and execution by the English. These iconic figures not only turned tides, but became enduring symbols of their nations. Every war leaves a mark, not just on the land, but on the era itself. The 100 Years' War, stretching over a century, reshaped medieval Europe, both socially and technologically. As the conflict dragged on, it devastated populations, leaving swaths of land barren and economies in tatters. Towns were razed, and the countryside became a patchwork of desolation. This persistent turmoil pushed societies to their limits, exacerbating a shift from feudal systems to more centralized governance as monarchs gathered power to sustain prolonged warfare. Amidst this social upheaval, the war spurred remarkable technological advancements in military affairs. The longbow, a decisive factor in the battles of Crécy and Poitiers, exemplified how necessity breeds innovation. English archers, equipped with this formidable weapon, could release volleys of arrows faster and with greater range than the traditional crossbows used by their adversaries, altering the dynamics of battlefield engagement. Armor and weaponry evolved dramatically as well. The introduction of plate armor, replacing the cumbersome chainmail, offered knights enhanced protection and greater agility. This shift was a direct response to the penetrating power of the longbow. Similarly, the warfare landscape was transformed with the development of gunpowder, which began to challenge the dominance of fortified castle walls, setting the stage for modern siege tactics. The scars left by the war were deep, driving Europe into a new age of warfare and political thought. All wars eventually find their end, but at what cost? The curtain finally fell on the 100 Years' War with the signing of the Treaty of Picquigny on August 29, 1475. This treaty wasn't just a piece of parchment, but a promise of peace between England and France, two nations weary from over a century of conflict. The terms were clear and calculated. England agreed to withdraw its forces from French territory, in exchange for a hefty ransom of 75,000 crowns for the release of the French King Louis XII, and an annual pension of 50,000 crowns thereafter. The treaty effectively acknowledged England's loss of its territorial claims in France, save for Calais. The immediate effects were palpable. Economies that had been drained by war efforts began to recover, and a period of relative peace allowed both nations to focus on internal improvements and governance. However, the scars of war ran deep. Though the treaty silenced the cannons, the echoes of conflict continued to shape the nations involved. The ripples of the 100 Years' War are still felt in modern Europe. This prolonged period of conflict did more than just redraw territorial boundaries. It fundamentally reshaped European society and laid the groundwork for modern nation-states. One of the most significant long-term effects of the war was the solidification of national identities. In France, the war spurred a surge of nationalism as the population united against a common enemy. The French language began to gain prominence over Latin, becoming the official language of the royal court and administration. Meanwhile, across the Channel, England experienced a similar rise in national consciousness. The war helped to forge a distinct English identity, separate from their continental counterparts, a sentiment echoed in the development of English as the vernacular language of government and literature. The war also heralded a shift in the social structure of medieval Europe. The traditional feudal system, where the lower classes were bound to serve the nobility, began to break down. The massive military campaigns required significant manpower, leading to increased wages and mobility among peasants and artisans, subtly undermining the rigid feudal hierarchy. This set the stage for more profound social changes, including the eventual rise of a more robust and influential middle class. Furthermore, the 100 Years' War altered the power dynamics within Europe. The conflict weakened the nobility, who suffered great losses in battle and empowered monarchs, setting the stage for more centralized national governments. This shift was crucial in the development of the modern state system, which would dominate European politics in the centuries to come. The war also indirectly set the stage for future conflicts and political structures in Europe, including the tumultuous wars of religion and the eventual rise of powerful nation-states like France and England. These entities would play pivotal roles in shaping the political landscape of Europe and the world. Thus, the Hundred Years' War, a saga of kings and conflicts, not only redefined medieval Europe but also left a legacy that continues to influence the continent today.